Ladies and gentlemen, Christmas time is upon us. A little chill music in the background. Vince Guaraldi Trio. Christmas time is here, instrumental from the greatest Christmas album that was ever made, the Charlie Brown Christmas soundtrack. Thank you again for joining the Line of Scrimmage. I'm your ugly ass host, Ryan Neff. Hopefully, Mr. Jason Staples will be on. In honor of him coming on, I'm wearing a Carolina blue. But let's get right to it here. The college football rankings, football playoff rankings have come out. So here we go. I'm going to read it off. Oregon's still your number one seed. Texas is number 2. SMU 3, Boise State's 4. These teams will get first round byes. Right now, the 5th ranked team is Penn State. They would play number 12, Arizona State. Number 6, Notre Dame would play number 11, Alabama, which I don't think Alabama should be in it. But what are you going to do? Number 7, Georgia would play number 10, Indiana. And number 8, guess Ohio State's still in. They would wind up hosting Tennessee. So let's go over that again. Oregon's still your number 1 seed. Texas is 2. SMU 3, Boise State 4. These teams all would get byes. Number 5, Penn State would host number 12, Arizona State. Number 6, Notre Dame would host number 11, Bama. Number 7, Georgia would host number 10, Indiana. And number 8, Ohio State would host number 9, Tennessee. Thoughts, opinions, you can comment. Again, this is all subject to change. Your top 25 college football rankings, football playoff. Memphis comes in at 25. They're 10-2. Army comes in at 24. They're 10-1. Colorado comes in at 23rd. They're 9-3. Syracuse comes in at 22nd. They're 9-3. Illinois 21st, 9-3. UNLV sits at 20. They're 10-2. Missouri 19th at 9-3. BYU's at 18th. They're 10-2. Clemson sits 17th. They are 9-3. Iowa State sitting 16th. They're 10-2. Arizona State 15th at 10-2. South Carolina at 14. They're 9-3. Ole Miss in at 13. They're 9-3. Miami is 12th. They are 10-2. Alabama is 11th, sitting at 9-3. Boise State 10th, 11-1. Indiana 9th, 11-1. SMU 8th, 11-1. Tennessee 7th, 10-2. Ohio State 6th, 10-2. Georgia's 5th at 10-2. Notre Dame is 4th, 11-1. Penn State 3rd, 11-1. Texas number 2, 11-1. And Oregon, your lone undefeated, at 12-0. A lot of this is going to change. There's been mayhem. Thoughts, concerns, again, put them in the comments section. Again, Alabama being in, I think, is a joke. But that's just based off the SEC merit and the Alabama brand and what it brings. That's the only reason I think why they're in there. So, my thoughts, I have none. Because like I said, this is all going to change based on what we've seen the last 2-3 weeks with upsets and whatnot. So some of the teams I figured would still be there. Obviously, Oregon, Texas. Boise State has a chance to stay at the 4 seed or maybe even creep up. Look, a lot of this might change. We will see. So let's look at last week. Just tons of shit that went on. We'll go through the top 25. go through week 14 here. Again, hopefully Jason Staples will be on at some point. And of course, when technology is supposed to help you, it bends you over and gives you a red hot poker. Here we go. Top 25, it all started last Thanksgiving, just 5 days ago. Kind of a surprise for me, Memphis takes out Tulane in the American. They win 34-24. It was a good game. It was back and forth. A lot of people had Tulane pegged as the American Conference champion. Memphis said, hold on a minute, hold my beer. But Memphis takes out number 17 Tulane at the time, 34-24. We go to the box score. Seth Hennigan for Memphis was 22 of 29, 218, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Mario Anderson Jr., have yourself a day, 24 for 177 and a touchdown rushing. Rock Taylor, 7 catches, 96 yards. Curtian Marsh, 6 total tackles. For Tulane, Darian Mensah, 21 of 33, 317 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Tulane could not get their running game going whatsoever. Memphis shut that down, 18 carries collectively for 57 yards. Mario Williams, the big receiver for Tulane, 7 catches, 130 and a touchdown. Tyler Grubbs with 8 total tackles. If we go to the team stats, Tulane turned it over 3 times and couldn't run the football. That was the difference in the ballgame. When you turn it over 3 times, you only rush it for 57 yards, you're not going to win. So, unfortunately, Tulane loses. Tulane 9-3 overall. That was Tulane's first conference loss. They are 7-1 in conference. Memphis 10-2, 6-2 overall in the conference. I believe it's still Tulane playing Army in the American Conference Final. So Tulane goes down. Some people have Memphis and Tulane pegged as one of maybe the automatic qualifiers with their conference win if they would have gone undefeated, but not so fast, my friends. Continuing on, and of course, my Verizon pad has now gone defunct as it's trying to catch up. So just bear with me here as it refreshes and does its thing. Talk amongst yourselves. On Friday, Black Friday, Georgia had a hell of a time with Georgia Tech. 8 overtimes, ladies and gentlemen. 8 freaking overtimes. Georgia wins 44-42. If anybody watched that game, it was crazy. Georgia Tech was up 17-0 at the half. Georgia came storming back. You didn't think anybody was going to win a football game, but Georgia ekes it out. 44-42, keep their playoff hopes alive, especially with the SEC championship game coming up. Haynes King for Georgia Tech was 26 of 36, 303 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He also ran the ball 24 times for 110 yards and 3 touchdowns. Eric Singleton Jr., 8 catches, 86 yards and a touch. Omar Daniels and Jackson Hamilton, 7 tackles apiece. For Georgia, Carson Beck, huge day, 28 of 43, 297, 5 touchdowns, no picks. Nate Frazier was the leading rusher, but Georgia's going to have to run the ball a whole lot better against Texas. 11 carries, 50 yards, and a touchdown. Cash Jones, 53 yards receiving and a touchdown. And Dominic Lovett, 5 catches, 47 yards, 2 touchdowns. Leading tackler was Shmael Mondon Jr., with 13 total tackles. Again, this game could have gone either way. Georgia Tech ran the ball for 260 yards. Georgia only 108. Georgia Tech outgained Georgia 563 to 405, showing that the Georgia defense is vulnerable. I mean, Georgia Tech held the ball 37 minutes, Georgia 22. Somehow they lost the game. Neither team could stop one another, really. That's what happens in rivalry games. You can throw out the records. But Georgia survives. They are 10-2 overall. Georgia Tech is 7-5 overall. And also on Black Friday, number 11, Boise State at the time took out Oregon State 34-18. Really sort of business as usual for Boise. Not real much of a threat. Ben Gulbranson for Oregon State, 21-37, 226, a touchdown and a pick. I'm sorry, no picks. Anthony Hankerson, 11 carries, 110 yards and a touchdown. Darius Clemens, 8 total catches, 123 yards and a touch. Jaden Robinson, 9 total tackles. For Boise, Maddox Madsen, 17-23, 195, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Ashton Genty having that type of season, 37 carries, 226 yards and a touchdown. Cameron Camper, 6 receptions for 73 yards, and Marion McCoy, 8 total tackles. Really, a difference in the game was obviously Genty going off rushing the football. Oregon State was 3 of 3rd on 3rd down, and Boise was 8 of 15. You can't sustain drives. You keep putting your defense back on the field. Forget it. So Boise with the big win. Boise State now 11-1 overall. Oregon State, unfortunately, will not go bowling, unless some bowl game needs a filler. Highly doubt that they're going to be bowling. They sit now at 5-7, finishing up their year. In the Egg Bowl, Ole Miss survives Mississippi State 26-14. Obviously, Ole Miss left out of the college football playoff rankings as far as the top 12-team playoff. Shot themselves in the foot a couple times. So for Mississippi State, Michael Van Buren Jr. was 17 of 32, 280 yards, touchdown, 2 picks, unfortunately. Unfortunately, Mississippi State couldn't run the ball, 30 carries, 39 yards. Kevin Coleman Jr., 6 catches, 118 yards and a touch, receiving. Stone Blanton, 14 total tackles. Jackson Dart, probably in his final home game, 14-24, 143 yards, a touchdown, no picks. Ulysses Bentley IV, 20 carries, 136 yards, a touchdown. Caden Preexcorn, 4 catches, 53 yards and a touch. And Walter Nolan, 8 total tackles. Really difference in the game. Ole Miss turns it over none. Mississippi State 3 times. And again, when you're out rushed 7-1, 39 yards rushing, 3 turnovers, 4 of 15 on 3rd down, spells disaster. Ole Miss 9-3 overall, 5-3 in the SEC. Mississippi State 2-10 overall, 0-8 in the SEC. Again, hopefully Jason Staples will be on at some point between 8 and 9 o'clock. Just checking here to see if I got any messages. No, so hopefully that's still on par. Colorado, number 25 last week, beat the shit out of Oklahoma State 52-0. Oklahoma State. If we'll see what happens with Gundy. I think he's been there long enough that it might be time for a change. But again, he's been there so long, they might give him one more year to try and turn it around. But look, Oklahoma State was projected to, possibly be in the Big 12 mix, and it just completely fell apart. They were 3-0 at one point. They lost their last 9 games. For Oklahoma State, Mialuakai Smith, 11-29, 70 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Trent Howard, 9 carries, 57 yards. Ollie Gordon only had 4 touches for 10 yards. What a wasted season for that young man. Oklahoma State receiving, Brennan Presley, 8 catches, 42 yards. David Kabongo, 7 total tackles. Colorado, Shedeur Sanders, 36-41, 438 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick. Colorado couldn't run the ball. They didn't have to. 29 carries for 33 yards. Shedeur was sacked a couple of times. Lashonte Wester and Travis Hunter had themselves a day. 11 and 10 catches, respectively, 2 touchdowns and 3 touchdowns receiving. Tajay McCoy and Brendan Gant, 5 total tackles apiece. Oklahoma State turned the ball over 40 times, only rushed it for 70 yards, only passed it for 77. Third downs, they were 3 of 15. Ladies and gentlemen, that's an ass kicking, 52-0. Oklahoma State was just trying to get the season over with. Colorado, 9-3 overall, 7-2 in the Big 12. Oklahoma State finishes a disappointing 3-9, 0-9 in the Big 12 with a, I believe, 9-game losing streak to end the season. Then on Saturday, number 23, Illinois at the time beat Northwestern 38-28. Kind of close for a little while. That happens in rivalry games. But Illinois with the big win, 38-28. Illinois, Luke Altmaier, 10-17, 170 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks. Aiden Lowry, 12 carries, 172 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Pat Bryant, 4 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. Jaheim Clark with 12 total tackles for Illinois. For Northwestern, Jack Lausch, he was 25 of 48, 287, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Cam Porter, 12 rushes for 53 yards. A.J. Henning, 10 catches, 119 yards, and a touch. Mac Uline, 12 total tackles for Northwestern. Northwestern turned it over 4 times, hurt. Illinois twice. Northwestern actually outgained Illinois. They were better on third downs, but, you're turning it over 4 times, you lose the turnover battle, and you're not going to win the game. So Northwestern ends the season at 4-8 overall, 2-7 in the Big 10, plus a 7-9, whatever the hell they call it. Illinois, 9-3 overall, 6-3 in the Big 10, probably going to a decent bowl game. So actually good for Illinois. Really good season. In the Mountain West battle, number 22 UNLV last week beat Nevada 38-14 to set up a rematch with Boise in the Mountain West Conference Championship. This game was not close. Nevada, Brendan Lewis passing was 27-37, 292, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Nevada couldn't run the ball at all. 28 carries, 67 yards. Jaden Smith, 9 catches, 92 yards and a touchdown. Stone Combs, 12 total tackles. For UNLV, Haj Malik Williams was 14-21, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Jaden Thomas and Haj Malik Williams, over 100 yards each rushing. He should have touchdown rushing. UNLV ran the ball 41 times for 352 yards. Jacob De Jesus, 6 catches for 84 yards, and Jet Elad, 9 total tackles for the UNLV Run Rebs. Really, all you need to know: Nevada was 2 of 11 on third downs and only ran the ball for 67 yards. UNLV 8 of 12 on third down. They ran the ball for 352 yards. 5-1 basically, almost 6-1 rushing. UNLV 10-2 overall, 6-1 in the Mountain West. Nevada 3-10 overall, 0-7 in the Mountain West. Missouri beat Arkansas, number 21 Missouri at the time, 28-21. Again, I can't tell you how many times Missouri has been in close games this year. Thought Arkansas might win this game. In any case, Arkansas, Taylor Green, 21 of 35, 229 yards passing, no touchdowns, no picks. Jaquindon Jackson with 18 carries for 87 yards and 3 touchdowns rushing. Andrew Armstrong, 9 catches for 128 yards. Larry Worth III and Dinoco Slaughter, each with 9 total tackles apiece. For Missouri, Brady Cook was 10 of 20, 168 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Marcus Carroll, 22 carries, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Theo Wees Jr., 4 catches for 100 yards receiving. Johnny Walker Jr., Tristan Newsom with 11 total tackles apiece. Really, difference in the game for me, it was the fact Missouri did not turn the ball over Arkansas twice, which hurt. And I always go to it. Third down efficiency, Arkansas was 3 of 11. Missouri 6 of 15. So you turn it over. And you can't sustain drives, you're going to lose. Missouri 9-3 overall, 5-3 in the SEC. Arkansas 6-6 overall, 3-5 in the SEC. Missouri probably go to a decent bowl. Arkansas probably one of the lesser bowls. Excuse me. BYU finally took care of business. They beat Houston 30-18. BYU was ranked 19th last week. It's actually a big win for BYU because they had hit the slide in the last month. For Houston, Zion Chris was 16 of 24, 156, no touchdowns and a pick. Zion Chris, quarterback, 15 carries, 12 yards, but he ran for 2 touchdowns. Stephen Johnson and Stacy Sneed, each with 5 receiving receptions apiece. Michael Batten and Jamal Morris with 8 total tackles. For BYU, Jake Retzlaff, 8 of 19, 167, no touchdowns, no picks. He also ran the ball 9 times for 57 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chase Roberts, 3 catches for 76 yards. Tanner Wall was your leading tackler. This game was actually a turnover fest. Houston turned it over 4 times. BYU 3. Really sort of the difference in the game for me was the fact that, BYU was able to sustain drives running the football. Houston, not so much. BYU 10-2 overall, 7-2 in the Big 12. Houston 4-8 overall, 3-6 in the Big 12. Iowa State 18 last week. Beat Kansas State 29-21, which was basically a battle to go to the Big 12 championship game. Kansas State, I think at one point was 7-1. 29-21, Iowa State wins. Avery Johnson, 12 of 28, 220 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. DJ Giddens, 14 carries for 72 yards. Jace Brown, 3 catches, 106, and 2 touchdowns receiving. VJ Payne and Austin Romaine. Payne and Romaine each 12 total tackles apiece. For Iowa State, Rocco Becht was 13 of 35, 137 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Abu Sama III, 15 total carries for 81 yards rushing. Jaden Higgins, 3 catches, 53 yards, and a touchdown receiving. Deshaun James with 8 total tackles. Difference in the game for me, Iowa State kept the ball clean, didn't turn it over. Kansas State, unfortunately, turned it over twice. 2 fumbles lost, which really hurt. That was the difference in the ball game. Iowa State 10-2 overall, 7-2 in the Big 12. Kansas State 8-4 overall, 5-4 in Big 12 play. As we go on down the line here, Arizona State whooped up on Arizona, 49-7. Arizona State ranked 16th last week. Game wasn't close. It was a destruction. Arizona State, Sam Levitt was 17 of 22, 291 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Cam Scatabo had a day, 21 carries, 177 yards, 3 touchdowns. Kyson Brown also had 100 yards rushing. Jordan Tyson, 8 catches, 143, and a touchdown receiving. Miles Rouser, 6 total tackles. For Arizona, Noah Fafita, 14 of 29, 126, a touchdown and no picks. Kedrick Riscano, 11 carries, 55 yards. Tetaroa McMillan, 6 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. Genesis Smith Brown, each with 10 total tackles. Difference in the game, Arizona ran the ball for 84 yards, Iowa State 284. That's all you need to know. Arizona State finishes 10-2 overall in the Big 12, 10-2 overall, 7-2 in the Big 12. The Arizonas 4-8 overall, 2-7 in the Big 12. Alabama holds on to beat Auburn 28-14. Yes, I say held on. I still don't think they should be in the college football playoff, but what do I know? I don't make those decisions. But they win the Iron Bowl as per usual, 28-14. For Auburn, Peyton Thorne was 24-41. 301 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Jaquez Hunter, 13 carries, 56 yards. Keandre Lambert-Smith, 8 total receptions for 116 yards receiving. Dorian Mousey Jr., 10 total tackles. For Alabama, Jalen Monroe, 18 of 24, 256, no touchdowns and interception. But he ran the ball 17 times for 104 yards and 3 touchdowns. Hermie Bernard, 7 catches for 111 yards, and Jihad Campbell, 9 total tackles. Alabama turned it over 4 times, Auburn twice. But, Alabama ran it for 201 yards to Auburn's 98. Third down efficiency, Auburn was 4 of 12, Alabama 12 of 18. There's your ball game. So, Alabama controlled it, running the football. And there you have it. Alabama is 9-3 overall, 5-3 in the SEC, which, again, wouldn't put them in. I just wouldn't. Just no. just wouldn't do it. Auburn 5-7 overall, 2-6 in the SEC. Number 15 South Carolina last week beat number 12 Clemson, 17-14. Clemson was up 17-7, and then they blew it. unfortunately, for Clemson fans. But they're still playing for an ACC crown. South Carolina, Lenora Sellers was 13-21, 164 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. He did run the ball for 16 times for 166, 2 touchdowns. South Carolina, Nick Harbor, your leading receiver, 3 catches for 51 yards. Demetrius Knight Jr., 10 total tackles. For Clemson, Cade Klubnik made another crucial mistake at the end of the game where they could have potentially scored a touchdown to win it, or at least kicked a field goal to get it in overtime. He was 24-36, 280 yards, no touchdowns and interception. Phil Maffa, 20 carries, 66 yards. Antonio Williams, 8 catches for 99 yards receiving. Sammy Brown, 9 total tackles. Look, the difference in the game for me was Clemson's run defense is not that good. The Citadel ran it on them. South Carolina ran it on them. And again, Cade Klubnik he reverted back to 2023 Cade Klubnik, and you can't do it. You're not going to be able to do that against SMU either. Clemson 9-3 overall. They are 5-2 at home. South Carolina is also 9-3 overall, probably going to a decent bowl game, unless they somehow sneak into the college football playoff. In the old Oaken bucket, Indiana whips up on Purdue, 66-0. Game wasn't close. Purdue is probably one of the worst teams in the country. It was a complete destruction. I mean, Purdue had 67 yards of total offense. I won't even go over the stats because it's not worth it. Aiden Rourke was 23-31, 349 yards, 6 touchdown passes. Justin Ellis had 11 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown. Elijah Surratt, 8 total catches, 165 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns receiving. Aiden Fisher, 6 total tackles. Just a destruction of epic proportions. Again, Purdue, 67 total yards offensively. They turned it over 5 times. Indiana didn't turn it over any. The final stat, ladies and gentlemen, Indiana, 582 total yards. Purdue, 67. So Indiana in the college football playoff at 11-1 overall. They are 8-1 in the Big 12 plus 9, whatever the hell they call it. Purdue 1-11 overall, 0-9 in conference. And ladies and gentlemen, before I go down the rest of the rundown, I see him in the green room. That'd be Mr. Doc Staples, as you know. Well, before I bring him on, I've got to do this. I'm sorry. Him coming back on my show, my little dog and pony show here. I am wearing the North Carolina blue, North Carolina fight song. If anybody doesn't know, it's just the instrumental. So let's bring him on. There he is. How you doing, Jason?
Oh, I'm above ground, so that's a good place to start, I suppose.
Okay. North Carolina, not the season they were hoping for. Could have become bowl, or they are bowl eligible, but Mac Brown's not going to coach the bowl game. They had the losing streak, a lot of turmoil, and there are some who are not too happy with the way he was treated going out. So, what do we know? What is the extent of the transgression that Mac Brown is talking about? I know that they had wanted to not coach the final game. That's what I was reading anyway. He didn't want to do it. And then they basically came out and said that, I don't know, was it Friday they wanted him to do it? And then it just got ugly.
Yeah, I actually don't know all the skinny on that. I just know that, the process has not been as smooth as it as folks in Chapel Hill would like, and that's sort of the nature of how things tend to end. I mean, to quote a to quote a famous villain ish, you either live long enough to be you either die a hero or you live long enough to become a villain. And that's the life of a college football coach to a large extent. I mean, almost everybody gets fired in the end, and that's how it ends for a Hall of Fame career for Mac Brown, a guy who's won a national title and so on. I mean, eventually it's hard, and it's hard to walk away too. I mean, it's one of those things that you know elite athletes have a hard enough time walking away, and it's more obvious when your skills are slipping because your body can't do it anymore.
Right.
And then, you've got coaches who it's really hard. You've been doing this your whole life. You love being around the players. You love everything that you've been doing for a long time. And sometimes it takes someone else coming in and saying, no, it's time. And that's kind of what happened here. Though I will say, I mean, Mac has been very candid that the game as it is now is not what he signed up for in terms of the sort of the nature of college football as it is. It's not what it once was, and a lot of things are in flux. A lot of things are changing, and I think it's harder. I mean, the money's really good, but it's harder in terms of the day-to-day management and just being able to put together a roster now than it ever has been, and that's a big part of this whole process.
How close was he after that, James Madison, to just tanking it for
He
himself?
did. I mean,
Oh, he did. He actually was.
he I think based on the information I have, there may have been an if in there to kind of leave some wiggle room, but I'll just say this, there were a lot of people in that locker room who understood Mac Brown as having stepped, like he was stepping down right then.
Mhm.
Like that was what he was saying. Now, he clarified, some hours later that, well, it's not exactly what I meant. Saying if I'm, the problem, then I'll step down right now, which, that may well be true. I was not in the room, but I will say this, that there were a number of people in that room who believed that Mac Brown at that time was flat out stepping down, and I think he was close to it. Uh, he Mac has never taken losing well, and good coaches never do. I mean, I've coached. I like to think I was a good coach, and I will say this: every loss eats at you.
Mhm.
Now, there's some that hurt more than others, but there's the old saying: I hate losing more than I love winning, and that's true for virtually every coach who's ever coached. And Mac might be more on that side than most. Every loss ate him up, and when he came into the year really believing that he had gotten the coaching staff right finally, and recognizing that prior years in Mac 2.0 in that tenure that just certain things just didn't click in certain ways. That, okay, well, I had an offensive coordinator and an offensive staff that was putting up big numbers, but they didn't really mesh well with the defensive guys. And then I had, when in the Jay Bateman years, there were 5 defensive coaches, and 3 of them are pulling one direction and 2 of them are pulling another. So there's a little bit of a discontinuity there, and lack of unity on that in some of that caused some problems. And so ultimately Bateman moved on, bring in Chiswick, and that didn't work. So and then you move on from your prior coordinator who had put up big numbers, your offensive coordinator. So then the defense kind of falls apart more with Chiswick. So now you got to pair him up. So eventually, like this year, okay, solid defensive staff, and that is a good defensive staff. All right, finally got that fixed. Offensive staff, those guys get along really well, seem to trust one another. There's been some success with them. Finally got it right. We're ready to move forward. And you look at the first month and things look good.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden you give up 70.
Mhm.
And that calls everything into question.
Mhm.
Like, what's the common factor? Why is it that I've got new defensive coaches, and this stuff keeps happening? And eventually, he's looking at himself, and that's fair. So, yeah, I mean, I think he got real close, and every indication was that he was 1 foot out the door, because he was, there was a real crisis of, like, what the problem is, and can I solve this? And then he kind of rallied and decided, you know what, I'm gonna to lead. I'm gonna go ahead and lead this team. We can turn this around, and they did have a nice turnaround once Kamen Rucker got healthy. And I can tell you that really was what happened to them.
Mhm.
Is they had a defense that looked very, very different with Kamen Rucker on the field all season than it did without.
Right.
And when they didn't have Rucker, they gave up a lot of points. When Rucker was on the field, they were pretty good. And when they had those big issues, that was as simple as that. And got into the last month of the season, managed to get a couple wins in November, which was progress. But then wheels came off in the last 2 games again, and a loss again to NC State to end the season. And it's just not how he wanted things to end. And I think he, as with every coach, wants to be the one to fix it, believes he can fix it, but I think he does kind of recognize at this point that, like, look, it didn't get fixed.
Well, following college football as closely as I do, and in depth as I get, for me, the second stint, the go around for Mac Brown at North Carolina, offense was never the problem, Doc. Um, the defense, for some odd reason, year in and year out, you would see flashes in a game or two, but if they just could have improved on the defensive side of the football, hell, even if they could have had maybe a top 40 defense, things would have been different. And again, as with Ryan Day, when you can't beat your rival, bad things are going to come about. And look, maybe Mac Brown, Nick Saban said it last year after he retired. This is a game I'm not familiar with the NIL and the transfer portal. It's just the older coaches. It's just not a game they're familiar with anymore. But again, for me with Mac Brown, this stint, Jason, was the fact that the defense just could never get fixed consistently.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was more than that, but that's the most obvious thing. Um, I think in general, through most of the Carolina history in my lifetime, Carolina has struggled as a program to be a physical, really intense program. They've had a finesse, soft label for, I mean, since I was in college and before
Mm-hmm.
that. And I think that never really was shed under Mac. They did a great job of recruiting blue chip defensive linemen. And then those guys really never developed under the prior defensive line coach. I mean, I think, and I've talked to several people who were on those staffs since then. But my view is, if Mac had made a better hire at defensive tackle coach
Mm-hmm.
right away, I think the story of Mac 2.0 is probably very different. They wasted a lot of really good blue chip talent on the defensive line, and they were not fundamentally sound enough, and they were not intense or physical enough on the defensive front. They also weren't physical enough on the offensive front, and that was partly the result of. I mean, I talked to guys on on the staff who had been there when when Phil Longo was on the was calling plays on the offensive side, and they said that one of the other problems was, as a defensive staff, they had a lot of difficulty getting the offense to serve the defense what they needed. So this was another factor, is that, one of the things, and a lot of people who've not been in a major program like this, or haven't played or coached at a high level, may not understand how this works. But when you are going through spring practice, when you're going through camp, when you're doing these sorts of things, one of the ways that you train your program and you train each side of the ball is that there are times where one side of the ball is supposed to serve the other. And what that means is this isn't your stuff. Like, this isn't your base stuff, but it's stuff we're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be able to practice against this so that when we see that in the season, we're not completely screwed. And there's certain things that you just have to be able to do. And there were times where, the defense was saying, look, we need to see two tights. We need to see an attached. We need to see, power out of that. Or we need to see, and basically, from what I was told, Phil Longo basically said, no, that's not what we do. We don't line up that way. Now, eventually, Mac stepped in, and required some of that, but this was a tug of war between both sides of the ball for a good while.
Mm-hmm.
And it did impact, I think, the physicality on the team. I think teams that have a smash mouth offense, you look at Michigan, for example. Why is Michigan 4-0 against Ohio State the last 4 years?
More physical. Mm-hmm.
You can't blame stealing signals this year.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State has a $22 million roster. They've got Chip Kelly calling plays. They've got all these advantages, but Michigan went in there and kicked their tail at the point of attack. And the fact of the matter is, football, as much as we might like to, I like breaking down the latest trends and all of that as much as anybody. I do a lot of X's and O's stuff. I've always loved the chess game part of it. But at the end of the day, football is a line of scrimmage game. If you are physical and you can dictate with your offensive line and you are gonna have that mentality on your offense, I think that filters through your whole program. I think this is why Lincoln Riley has had trouble at multiple stops now. He's one of the best offensive coordinators in the country when it comes to putting up offensive numbers. But tell me when the last time he had a good defense was as a head coach. He's hired good defensive coordinators, and they've all struggled to put a top-level defense opposite him at Oklahoma and at Southern Cal. Why is that? Take a look at Ryan Day. He's running a comparable system. Take a look at Phil Longo. It's hard to run a defense opposite that when you're not getting the physicality the way that you need to day in, day out. It's the way you practice. And I think that has to start some on the offensive side of the ball. You also have to reinforce that with the culture on the defensive side of the ball in other ways. And my impression was that Carolina just fell short of the physical culture that they needed to develop the kind of defense that was going to choke teams out. And they just came up short of that. And, I think that's what they have to be looking for in the next coach. To me, I said this on Inside Carolina, I've got basically three things that I'm looking for if I'm hiring Carolina's next coach. Number one, I want a guy who's punched above his weight at whatever level or levels he's coached as a head coach. And I want someone with head coaching experience if possible. Glenn Schumann has been nosed about as a candidate, and I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that, given his, who he's worked under and all of that. If he's the best candidate, okay. But other than that, I want somebody who's punched above his weight and, consistently where he's been at. I want someone who is a line of scrimmage focused coach who's going to instill toughness through this program in a way that it has not had in years, decades. This has to be, this is a wholesale culture shift of we're going to be a tough program and we're going to win at the line of scrimmage. Somebody who's got that. And then third is my Butch Jones test or my CEO test. And this is when you are interviewing a coach or when you're considering a hire for a top-level college football program, if you look at the guy, you need to be asking yourself, if I was hiring for a job that had nothing to do with football, and I was just hiring for, say, a CEO position in a Fortune 500 company, and I was trying to find someone to run my company for me that I founded, I'm hiring a CEO now. Would I hire this man? If the answer is no, then you don't hire that coach. Mm-hmm. And I call this the Butch Jones test because Butch Jones strikes me, and it may be unfair, but he always struck me as the stereotype of the opposite. He's kind of the gym teacher as a head coach, and he's a really good defensive coordinator. He's a good coach, but look at the difference between him and Nick Saban. If Nick Saban was not coaching football, he would be president of the United States, or he'd be a CEO of some wildcatting oil company or something. He'd be in a leadership position somewhere with a super organized and very well thought out strategy. And he would have attracted top talent, etc. That's what you're looking for, those three things. And my impression is that Mac actually, as a CEO, he was a guy, especially in his younger years, he fits number 3. The punched above his weight thing, he made his hay as a recruiter, not punching above his weight. And then the other thing is the line of scrimmage was always a bit more of a problem under him over the years. And both 1.0 and 2.0 was never as much of a line of scrimmage toughness oriented coach. And I think that's really what happened with Carolina in this go round, is that they just never really built up enough of that line of scrimmage toughness mentality to be a contender.
So with all that being said, where does Bubba Cunningham go from here? What do you think he's going to break it down to? Glenn Schumann, you've said, I've seen his name, I've seen a bunch of other names, but look, I mean, let's face it, North Carolina it's not the most attractive place for football in the world, but it's not the worst either. So what's going to be his selling point to his next coach, and what's he going to look for other than the things that you said? Because they almost need a Sharon Moore kind of like. Sharon Moore didn't have the greatest success this year, Jason, but when it came down to it, they were still good in the trenches, and it just seems like that's what North Carolina is going to need in the next hire, a trenches guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you want that. I mean, look, if I had my druthers on this, if I could get any coach that may or may not be realistic in this sense, I'd probably hire Matt Campbell from Iowa State. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think he's the kind of guy you want to get in this job. I think Matt Campbell would crush it at North Carolina. Because again, you're looking at a guy who's a line of scrimmage coach, no nonsense, high accountability guy, smart, sets the vision, has had very loyal staff, and can attract good talent in terms of coaching talent. That's who you'd want. Now, over at Inside Carolina, we've reported that a sitting head coach at least one sitting head coach at all 4 Power 4 conferences has contacted Bubba Cunningham, or either they or, generally this happens through their agency, right? Through their representation. At least one sitting head coach in all 4 power conferences has contacted Bubba Cunningham expressing interest in the job. Now, the hard part about that is how many of those guys are actually interested in the job and really want the job versus they want leverage to, extend their contract or maybe get more guaranteed money or whatever else. Mm-hmm. Bubba Cunningham's going to have to figure that out. And he's also got to figure out, like, okay, so this guy who's a sitting coach at this school has contacted me, but is he actually a guy who fits here? If he is interested. And we don't know all of the names that have contacted Bubba. There's a lot of questions there. But this job is a really coveted job within the coaching community. I think, I would put it as depending on how you tier it, I would put it as a cusp of tier 2 job in college football, somewhere around, top of tier 3, bottom of tier 2, depending on how you tier it. For me, there's it would be at the top of my tier 3. And to me, there's about 5 or 6 teams in tier 1. And then there's about 7 or 8 teams, maybe 9 teams, something like that in tier 2. North Carolina's right at the top of that next tier. So, this is a job probably in the teens in terms of if you ask coaches in the country to rank their, the jobs that they most covet. This one's up there. It's probably in the top 20, certainly in top 25. So they can attract a good coach. They've just got to go through and make sure that they're getting a guy that fits the criteria that they need. I don't know who that's going to be. I think if I had to bet on it today, I would probably bet on Tulane's Summerall, just as a guy that they wind up kind of coming back to after, kicking the tires on some of the sitting power four head coaches. But would I bet him against the field? No, I would not, because I think there's enough interest from other wings and other guys who are really solid candidates and solid coaches that you have to consider. So I don't know where it's going to go yet.
Any chance that maybe they make a play? I know they gave him an extension at Indiana, but what are like maybe the thoughts? Maybe they could suck Kurt Cignetti out of Indiana and bring him to North Carolina. No,
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I think they'd be more likely to hire Cignetti's replacement at
Okay.
James Madison.
Okay.
The guy who hung up 70 on their program this year,
Right.
right? I mean, he stepped up a level, rebuilt a roster that had largely been gutted by guys who went to Indiana with Cignetti, and then managed to put up a good season, and including putting 70 on you. Now,
Yeah.
you've got a smaller sample size with him, so that's, especially at that level, so that's more of a risk. But, that's a strong and young overall staff there that you have to keep in mind and consider. But, Cignetti, first of all, I don't think Cignetti leaves Indiana. They just gave him a long contract with some guaranteed money. And with that guaranteed money, you're going to have to pay a lot of money to get him out of that contract. So I don't see that happening. Secondly, Cignetti is he's 59, I think. He's 50, 58 or 59. I mean, he's pushing
Somewhere in there.
60.
Yeah.
And I think North Carolina, especially coming after Mac Brown, North Carolina needs somebody, say, south of 45, maybe 46. Nobody. I mean, if it's the right coach and he's, say, 52, okay. But keep it south of 50 if you can. I think they need somebody who brings some energy and hunger to Chapel Hill, who that energy and hunger can translate into the physicality that you want filtered through your program. I think that's going to be important for this next hire.
Before I let you go, college football playoff rankings came out yet again tonight. This is going to change. Your thoughts on the 12 that are there? Again, I think this is all going to change with this coming weekend because it's going to be mayhem again. I don't understand how Alabama's in there right now. It's based off of what? Look, some of these teams like SMU, I have a gut feeling that maybe Clemson could beat up SMU. Kate Klubnik has to play better. Boise State could lose to UNLV. Georgia could lose to Texas. Your thoughts on the 12 right now as they stand? Have you seen them yet?
Yeah, I'm looking at them right now. And, first of all, I pretty steadfastly don't pay attention to rankings until the last week.
Right.
Because of exactly what you said, that, this is all like, so a large percentage, and sorry, my voice is dead. I lectured today, so, and I've been under the weather, but a large percentage of the college football viewing audience overlaps, pretty significantly with your, pro wrestling viewing audience. These are men who are looking for, they're looking for drama. They want the soap opera aspect of this, and they're going to hang on every ranking and the drama of, okay, is this team going to be in? Is this team going to be out? And the weekly shows or whatever. And I'm about the farthest thing from that, the opposite of that you can get. I like the chess match. I like the X's and O's. I like the grown men playing a physical game out on a field where you've got this combination of physicality and speed and, all of that with the strategy and all of those things. Like, that's what I love. The drama of this, I just don't care. I don't care right up until it starts to impact the integrity of the game, which happened last year, right? When Florida State was left out after going undefeated in a Power 5 conference and being the first team since we've been keeping these stats that I know of, certainly in the last 30 years, to give up negative yardage in two consecutive fourth quarters. one against your arch rival on the road and the other in your own conference title game against the top 20 opponent, and then get left out, that's drama that affects me in terms of like this now pulls away the curtain and says, okay, there's a lack of integrity somewhere in the system, which we all kind of knew, right? I mean, we all kind of we all blind ourselves to this. What I look at when I see the rankings now is, first of all, the four at the top, I don't think you can really object to. Those are the teams that are, they played the best.
Yeah.
Notre Dame had the one inexplicable loss to NIU while they're still getting adjusted to, having a new quarterback and some of the pieces all that were moving there, and off a really physical game with Texas A&M. But since then, they've been a buzzsaw. Penn State's been good. Texas has been good. Oregon's been the best team in the country, I think, for the most of the year, if it's not Texas. Okay, fine. Frankly, I think that should be the entire playoff.
Okay.
I'm still of the view that 12 is too many.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get past that, okay, Georgia, Ohio State, both teams, it's the two most talented teams in the country, probably, along with Texas. Neither team is, likely to win it. Tennessee, okay, fine. SMU, I think, is underranked here. Indiana, good team. Are they likely to, to actually win it? No. Boise, fine. Bama, a 3-loss team in the playoff, to me is ridiculous. But, I think a third loss should disqualify you.
Yeah.
But they have that script A on their helmet. And we learned last year how important that is. If Alabama is anywhere near the bubble, we know who's going to get in.
Before I let you go,
that's where I end up.
Before I let you go, I have proposed, if they're going to keep it 12, look, no conference has divisions anymore. It's just one big league. I say get rid of conference championships. It's just a money racket anyway. Whoever wins the regular season crown, there's your champion of said conference. And the other thing I proposed is no automatic qualifiers. You won your conference, fantastic. Let's play the season. Let's put the committee in a room and say, you pick the 12 best teams, period. I don't like automatic bids. This isn't college basketball where there's 363 teams. What are you hearing? Because you got the inside scoop. Is there any talk in like the ACC, or you're hearing across the country where they might say, you know what, let's get rid of the conference championship?
There's been a few people who've said those sorts of things, but nobody who matters because there's too much money in it still.
Mm-hmm.
So, my take actually would go the opposite direction. I like Dave Bartu's model here, which is essentially make the conference championship games the first rounds of the college football playoff. So, in these super conferences with 20 teams, have a semifinal and a final for your conference.
Mm-hmm.
And then whoever wins that's your representative in a 5 or 6, in a, say, 4 or 6 team conference or playoff. So, the SEC gets to have one representative. And they're going to have to fight their way through that end of season thing, or however the SEC wants to designate who moves on, that's who goes. The Big Ten gets one. Whatever other conferences get one. And, basically have a system where, and if you want to do group of 5 or whatever, have those group of 5 conferences have a play-in game or a small play-in tournament where the group of 5 representative is going to come from. So, semifinals, maybe a quarterfinals there where, the different representatives from those conferences play their way in. I'm of the view that if you want to do it that way, where the regular season matters. So that gets you into your conference, say quarterfinals or semifinals or whatever. And then you play the college football playoff as a continuation of that. Because to me, college football, the strength of college football, the lifeblood of college football has never been the the mythical national championship, and they're trying to basketballify this or NFLify this and make it a fully national thing. That to me gets away from the lifeblood of what college football has always been, which is those people 70 miles down the road. I hate them. I hate them, right? Because they wear these colors, and my team wears these colors, and we go over there and we're going to get ours this year. That regionality has always been the lifeblood of college football. The Iron Bowl should matter, right? Florida State should matter. Duke, North Carolina, so long as they're in the same conference, should matter, right? These are things that, and Duke or North Carolina State should matter. These are things that's where the strength of this is. And I think moving in the direction of everything's about the 12 teams and everything's a national level thing, and 3 losses don't disqualify you for anything. That moves us in a direction where I don't think it works as well. To me, don't get rid of the conference playoff or the conference title games. Roll those into the playoff and make that actually a part of the whole thing. And that I think would get us closer. But, I think we're not actually that far apart. It's just 2 different ways of getting to something that's better than what we have, which is not good enough.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Jason Staples, better known as Doc Staples. I'm just going to read it off the X here. He's a former coach, Unconquered Pod, football analyst at Inside Carolina. You can go book Amazon.2/38XX
Don't read the whole thing.
His opinions are his. You can get a hold of him on the Twitter or whatever they call it now, at Doc Staples or at Jason Staples. My friend, enjoy the bowl games. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I will be picking your brain in the off season to see where this program goes next.
This was really fun. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night. Ladies and gentlemen, there he is. Oh, I should play his music as it goes. Here we go. That's right. I'm a Tar Heel born. That's the fight song. As you can see, much respect. I'm wearing the powder blue. And I've got a dear friend that lives in Cary, North Carolina, but that's the enemy's territory. So, look, we talk about the college football playoff and whatnot, and I don't know. They can come up with whatever they. Are you having trouble logging off? You just listening? Look, they can look. All of this isn't going to matter in 5 years anyway, because the SEC and the Big Ten are going to form one big super conference. They're going to break off. They're going to do their own thing, and that'll be the end of it. Let's get back to last week. SMU handled business. They beat Cal 38-6. Another destruction. For Cal, Chandler Rogers was 8 of 16, 84 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. They ran the ball collectively 37 times for 95 yards. Nazia Hunter, 5 catches, 85 yards receiving. Teddy Buchanan and Craig Woodson for 7 total tackles apiece for Cal. For SMU, Kevin Jennings was 20 of 30, 225, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Brashard Smith, 16 carries, 68 yards, a touchdown. He also had 3 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. Isaiah Noakobia, 10 total tackles. Again, destruction. Both teams were horrendous on third downs. Really, when you look at the stats, you would have thought that the game was equal. But SMU made some big plays in the end, to be quite honest with you. SMU is 11-1 overall. They are 8-0 in the ACC. Cal 6-6 overall, 2-6 in the ACC. Cal at least is bowl eligible. Tennessee, number 8 last week, handled business against Vanderbilt. which really isn't a rivalry game. For Tennessee, Nico Ayamaleva, 18 to 26, 257, 4 touchdowns and a pick. Dylan Sampson, 25 carries, 178 yards rushing. Deontay Thornton Jr., 3 catches, 118, and 2 touchdowns. Arian Carter, 7 total tackles. For Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia, 8 to 17, 104, a touchdown and a pick. Cedric Alexander, 17 carries, 60 yards and a touchdown. Vanderbilt could not pass the ball, nor could they rush the ball. Tennessee's defense came into play. Langston Patterson, 13 total tackles. We go to the game statistics. Both teams were penalized a lot of yards, my friends. Difference in the game for me, Tennessee ran the ball for 281 yards. Vanderbilt, 109. Vanderbilt was only 4 of 10 on third downs. Tennessee, 11 of 15. They wore Vandy down. Vanderbilt is 6-6 overall, 3-5 in the SEC. Tennessee 10-2 overall, 6-2 in the SEC, and right now, as the rankings came out, they are playoff bound. Syracuse took up Miami, knocking Miami out of the ACC title game. Look, Miami's defense has been horrible all year anyway, and it came back to bite them in the final week. Syracuse wins 42-38. Instead of going for a possible tying touchdown, Miami kicks a field goal, and Syracuse basically didn't let them have the ball back. Cam Ward from Miami was 25 of 36, 349, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Damian Martinez, 10 carries, 84 yards, a touchdown. Mark Fletcher Jr. had 2 touchdowns rushing. Xavier Restrepo and Jacoby George, each with over 100 yards receiving apiece. Francisco Mauigoa, 13 total tackles. For Syracuse, Kyle McCord had a good day. 26 of 36, 380 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. LaQuint Allen, 22 carries, 82 yards, 2 touchdowns. Trevor Pena and Jackson Meeks each had over 100 yards receiving. Clarence Lewis, 6 total tackles for the Cuse. Again, it was back and forth the whole game. Anybody could have won it, but Syracuse just made more plays than Miami did. Syracuse now 9-3 overall, 5-3 in the ACC. Miami 10-2 overall, 6-2 in the ACC. As of right now, Miami is out of the playoffs. To be determined. Number 5, Notre Dame last week held off USC 49-35. Riley Leonard for Notre Dame, 17 of 22, 155 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love combined for over 200 yards rushing for Notre Dame. Mitchell Evans, 5 catches, 59 yards and a touchdown. Xavier Watts, 9 total tackles. For USC, Jaden Malava, 27 of 49, 360 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he threw 2 interceptions. Quentin Joyner, 10 carries for 83 yards. Makai Lemon, 9 catches, 133 yards receiving. And Jalen Smith, Kamari Ramsey, each with 8 total tackles apiece. It was back and forth game, to be quite honest with you, for a little while. Really, it was quite evenly matched throughout. But Notre Dame just made more big plays than USC did, to be quite honest with you. USC is 6-6 overall. Notre Dame 11-1 overall. They are headed to the college football playoff. USC might move on from Lincoln Riley. I have a gut feeling. Penn State handled business against Maryland. They win 44-7. They are headed to the Big Ten championship game. For Maryland, MJ Morris, rough day, 14 to 24, 112 yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions. Roman Hemby, 13 carries, 64 yards. Ty Felton, 4 catches, 27 yards. Leading tackler was Daniel Wingate. For Penn State, Drew Allar, 17 to 26, 171, a touchdown, no picks. Nicholas Singleton, 13 carries, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tyler Warden, 6 catches and a touchdown for 68 yards. Abdul Carter, 6 total tackles. Again, Maryland turned it over 3 times. They only ran it for 72 yards. They were 2 of 12 on third down, hence the ass whooping. Penn State 11-1 overall, 8-1 in the Big Ten. Maryland 4-8 overall, 1-8 in the Big Ten. The Texases beat the Texas A&Ms 17-7. Kind of an ugly game, to be honest with you. I had Texas winning. Quinn Ewers for Texas, 17 to 28, 218, a touchdown and a pick. Quintravian Wisner, have yourself a day. 33 carries, 186 yards rushing. Matthew Golden, 3 catches, 73 yards. Leona Lafau, 6 total tackles. A&M, Marcel Reed, 16 to 23, 146, no touchdowns and a pick. He ran the ball 14 times for 60 yards. Terry Bussey, 2 catches for 40 yards. Dalton Brooks and Tareen York, 10 total tackles apiece. Difference in the game, Texas ran the ball for 243 yards, Texas A&M 102. And Texas's defense came to play. A&M knocked out of the SEC title game. They are 8-4 overall, 5-3 in conference. Texas 11-1 overall, 7-1 in the SEC. Texas to play Georgia in the SEC title game. Of course, the big one, Michigan, unranked Michigan, shocks Ohio State 13-10 by winning in the trenches. Davis Warren for Michigan, horrible, 9 of 16, 62 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Khalil Mullings, 32 carries, 116 and a touch. Michigan, ladies and gentlemen, has 62 yards passing. Ernest Hausman, the leading tackler. Will Howard for Ohio State, bad game. 19 to 33, 175, a touchdown, but he threw the 2 picks. Ohio State just couldn't run the ball, and it killed them, along with the interceptions. 26 carries collectively for 77 yards. You have Judkins and Henderson, and you can't run the ball. I don't get it. Cornell Tate, 6 catches, 58 yards. Caleb Downs, 11 total tackles. Again, Ohio State only could run the ball for 77 yards. Michigan ran the ball for 173. Ohio State still in the playoff. They are 10-2 overall, 7-2 in the Big Ten. Michigan finishes 7-5 overall, 5-4 in the Big Ten. Oregon finally beats Washington. They win 49-21. For Washington, Damon Williams, 17 to 20, 201, a touchdown, no picks. Washington couldn't run the ball worth a damn. 37 carries, 43 yards. Giles Jackson, 6 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown receiving. Thaddeus Dixon with 8 overall total tackles. For Oregon, Dylan Gabriel was 16 to 23, 209, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Jordan James, 15 carries, 99 yards, 2 touchdowns. Oregon ran the ball 37 times for 222 yards and 5 touchdowns. Trayshawn Holden, 3 catches, 73 yards receiving. Bryce Botcher, 11 total tackles. And when you break the game down, again, Oregon outrushed Washington basically 5-1. And third down efficiency, Washington 4-12, Oregon 5-8. Oregon finishes the regular season undefeated, 12 at zip, 9-0 in the Big Ten. Washington is 6-6 overall, 4-5 in the Big Ten. So there you have it, which all leads us to championship weekend, conference championships. Let's get to it. This Friday, 8 p.m. on Fox, number 20 UNLV travels to Boise to take on number 10 Boise State. Boise's favored by 4. This is a rematch of the previous game won by Boise State earlier in the year. I think it's going to be close, but I just think it's too much Ashton Genty. I'm going to go Boise 31, UNLV 26. 8 p.m. on ABC Friday for the American Athletic Championship. Tulane at 9-3 travels to take on number 24 Army at 10-1. Tulane favored by 5 on the road. West Point. It's going to be cold. Give me Army. Army 30, Tulane 27. Then on Saturday, 12 p.m. on ABC, number 16 Iowa State takes on number 15 Arizona State in the Dr. Pepper Big 12 Championship. Arizona State favored by 2. Give me Iowa State to win 33-30 over Arizona State. SEC Championship, number 5 Georgia takes on number 2 Texas. Texas favored by 2.5. Until Texas can prove it to me against Georgia, I'm taking Georgia. Georgia 31, Texas 27. 8 p.m. on ABC in Charlotte. We've got number 17 Clemson at 9-3 taking on number 8 SMU 11-1. SMU favored by 2.5. If Clemson plays this week like they did last week, they're going to lose. Clemson's defense, run defense, is not that great. SMU. I'm going Clemson in the upset. They've been there before. Close. Clemson 28, SMU 24. Which brings me to the big one of the weekend. 8 p.m. on CBS. Number 3 Penn State taking on number 1 Oregon. This is in Indianapolis, Lucas Oil Stadium. Oregon with the perfect season. Penn State, with the help of Michigan, gets into the Big Ten championship game. It's indoors, which would favor Oregon. Which brings me to the last You Get the Finger segment before the bowl games and the playoff starts. Again, Oregon favored by 3.5. But ladies and gentlemen, what Ohio State couldn't do and 12 other teams before, I am taking Penn State to win this game. Penn State, you get the finger. Penn State wins 34-30 over Oregon to win the Big Ten championship and to get people off James Franklin's back because he couldn't beat Ohio State. He wins the Big Ten championship. Strike it up, boys. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Penn State, you get the finger. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Jason Staples, otherwise known as Doc Staples, for joining. Fantastic insight. Where North Carolina might go for the next head coach. It's always interesting to get people's different perspectives about the college football playoff and whatnot. Again, practice compassion, practice empathy, hug somebody today, tell them you love them. Again, Penn State gets the finger. I will see everybody hopefully tomorrow on the locker room. Other than that, I'm out, ladies and gentlemen.